Hello, everyone out there. We are on the next author for 24 authors in 12 hours. And this is a very, very, very special interview for me. This is crazy. We don't know how this happened because we were all illiterate and terrible in college. Like, we had our priorities straight and it was not writing books. But we ended up
Go
out of our,
Hurons.
right? And our ROTC cohort, we ended up with a whole bunch of authors. We have no idea how this happened.
That's true.
So Doug Burbey, prolific author, and what I really like is Doug writes with a partner with Mel Todd to kind of balance out his books. So even though I have Blood, War, Rage focused here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that link into the chat, we can talk about all of your books, which is a lot. Yeah. But we are theming a lot of dystopian fiction, futuristic fiction, etc. And you had a very interesting name. What did you call the genre that you write in?
Militarized urban fantasy. So you have all the aspects. Yeah, so you have all the aspects of urban fantasy. So kind of modern setting, magic has a place in the universe. You have in mine in particular, you have demons, you have fae inside of there. And when you read the book, maybe angels show up inside of there, but what are all of them? So you bring that together. But because I am a retired Army guy, there's a focus on a lot of the characters are military or ex-military. The first book actually takes place after the big war with the demons and things like that. So it's kind of focused. So if you like military sci-fi, it kind of crosses into the genre of urban fantasy in there as well. So nothing like using military tactics and weapons that you can relate to today, but then you sprinkle in magic into the whole dynamic, or you throw a demon horde in there and you're trying to fight a Tolkien type war with an M1 tank. How does that work out? So
I just want to point out my next book has demons and angels, and I came up with that before this conversation. So just so you know, spoiler alert. But I was like, oh, now you've taken my. But it's all how you do the mashups. But mine is much less military. So let's talk about, you've been writing for a long time, putting some books out, and what first inspired you to start this writing? Because it certainly was not our college days.
No, it was. So I was actually stationed in Virginia at the time, and a friend of mine, that Shane Grease, another EMU alumnus and author as well, said, "Hey, I'm going to be coming into town, and there's a convention, a science fiction fantasy literary convention over there in Roanoke. Why don't you come meet me at this convention?" And I'd never been to one. I was a senior captain at the time, so I drive down to this convention. I check into the hotel room. So of course I meet Shane at the bar, and he says, "Hey, I know these guys. Let's go sit over here and let's talk to these guys." And it's a couple of older guys, and you can tell they were retired military folks, but you can just kind of, you can sense it and all that. So we start talking, and we're just talking Army stuff. And Shane had set me up. He said, "Hey, did you ever read this book that I recommended to you called State of Disobedience?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I read that." And one of the other guys, his ears kind of perked up, but I wasn't really paying attention. And he says, "So what'd you think about it?" I said, "Well, these parts were good. These parts kind of sucked. I didn't really buy this." And then it turns out that Tom Kratman was the guy who was sitting right next to me, and he said, "Oh, hey, those parts you didn't like. Let's unpack that a little bit. What specifically?" And then we started talking, and then Shane said he wrote that book. And the other two guys sitting at the table was David Drake and John Ringo, who are both also prolific authors. And we all just kind of hit it off from the military connection. And then because I was still, active duty, so was Shane. Shane was an infantry ranger type. I was doing logistics for the Army at the time. So they started sending both of us like draft copies to do beta reading. Because one was a Vietnam vet, one was a Panama vet, one was a Cold War vet. Shane and I are both active duty. So they started sending us, chapters and things like that that says, "Hey, could you make this a little more current? What are the words that are being used today?" and kind of thing. So just kind of hit it off, and several years later, we started going to some of the same conventions, and we'd sit around and have a couple drinks or smoke a cigar or something out back, all just kind of relaxing and kicking around book ideas. And finally I said, Doug, you got a whole lot of really good ideas. Yeah, I'm tired of stealing them. Why don't you write your own damn books? So then that's where I started going into the Blood War saga. Inside of there was, a couple of old military authors that really said, "Hey, why don't you write books?" I says, "I don't know how to write a book." And he says, "Well, figure it out. You can figure out anything." And then that's where I ran into Melissa Todd, and started as a co-writer in this series. Now I have other things, anthologies and stuff out there at well, but the Blood War series that I'm writing the last book in right now was really the one that kind of pulled it along, where I kind of honed the craft of telling the stories and things like that.
So I'm going to share your link here to Bad Ash Publishing, which I love that name. And I didn't know this either. I feel like we have so much synergy, maybe because we did go to college together and learn something, but my initials spell Ash. So my company is called Ash Consulting, and my current book genre universe is Ash. Ash A. Milton, because I didn't want to confuse my readers who are expecting serious academic books and things and confuse them with, oh, and suddenly now you're in the book horror universe. So I would have had a divine link in here, but it's Ash A. Milton universe. And so it's kind of funny. This whole Ash theme keeps coming up. And so, like I said, for me, it just makes sense because that's my initials. I don't know. My mom planned it that way, but I was like, Mom, you like created my name to have like the perfect pen name.
That's
Who
good.
knew? Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about Shane. I'm going to share something about Shane. Shane couldn't make it today, first of all, but he's like amazing. And I think he lived in Australia forever. That's what happens when you're military. You do all these things. And but way back in ROTC days, I actually was writing some short story fiction stuff. And Shane at the time was very much into drawing. And he was one of the few people I felt brave enough, because he was sharing some of his drawings with me, that I shared a short story with him. And he was one of the only people I told way back in those days, like that one day I would love to be a writer, but that just seemed like so fanciful, like all the other great things you're going to do in college, right? And so it's so funny that we all ended up eventually on our own bizarre journeys becoming authors, right?
Yeah, and what's funny is, so because he writes a very strong military zombie series.
Yes.
I was the one that was always into zombies. So The Walking Dead, every zombie movie, that was my bag. Every B flick zombie movie, I'm watching it, and he hated that crap. And he ends up writing zombie books, and I write Demon Apocalypse. So.
Yeah, I remember you and Jim loved that stuff back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know what happened to Jim Moon. Like, that's 1,000 years ago. So let's focus on your
lawyer.
books.
He became a lawyer, so he's dead to us now.
A lawyer? That's like the most. You could have just said any other random profession, right?
Yep.
So Shane's amazing. I'll probably just throw a link into him in a bit, because we just keep talking about him. But let's talk a little bit more specifically on the Blood Wars. Your journey there.
Yep.
Did you have this? And so you have to have, I would think, more structure with a partner. I've done a few partner projects. Have a cyber history article coming out. And so when you do work with a partner, like, does that make it so you have to have more structure versus kind of this freewheeling way that some people do of writing? Or how does that work? So let's talk a little bit about writing with a partner.
Yeah, you do. And that was one of the interesting things. So I've kind of changed my writing dynamic. I become much more structured as I've gone along. So when I started Blood War, and so I'm the universe creator inside of there. So when I came up with the construct, I knew where the book was going to start, and I knew where the book series was going to end. So when I was writing the first scene, I already knew, and it's in the book that I'm writing right now, I already knew the last scene of the book. I already knew the last chapter of the entire series. It was just all that stuff in between that you had to figure out. So writing with a partner was interesting, because the first time she says, okay, so I need your synopsis breakout of the chapters, the plot points, and all that other stuff. So I wrote what I thought was a very detailed, very, very structured story outline for her. She sends it back to me and says, "This looks like a Department of Defense acquisition bill of materials." And just said, that's not a story. That's how you build a machine." And so I said, "Well, it's got A, B. It's kind of like a screenplay with more instructions. It's kind of like a combination of doing a play's stage movements with a screenplay." So, but then we kind of got into the rhythm of it. There's some characters that she just writes better than I do, and she prefers. We can both write each other's characters, and we do. But she is much more of a descriptive narrator writer, much more into the color of the environment. I'm much more of the conversationalist piece inside of there. I love witty dialogue. So the whole series, the protagonist, it's kind of like a Bruce Willis meets demons, on the battlefield instead of terrorists in Nakatomi Tower. So I love that banter between the characters and the dialogue, and so she taught me how to clean up the scene setting, where I kind of showed her a little more of the color flair, the comedy type dialogues inside of there. So she's actually writing a new series right now, and she has this one character. She's like, "I need him to be doing something really dumb and stupid." What would you be doing in this scene? What comments would you make? And I'll add that little flair to it. So even though I'm not working on that
Is
book
she going to be
series
out?
with her.
Is that character going to be out getting stung by bees right now? Is that like
Oh
what's happening?
no, that was me. It's so she's actually starting she just finished her high fantasy series, and now she's doing a lit RPG one and needed some comic interlude type stuff. So I'm kind of helping her out with that piece there. So
I just did a book review for a lit RPG, and they had a talking raccoon with enhancements. So they also had like military skills, and I was like, "Dude, talking raccoon with like military enhancements, like I'm in. Like you need nothing more like than that
yep,
being your sidekick, right?" So
yep,
just incredible. And so I love this. So you've written with a partner, and now you're doing more on your own. Is that kind
yes.
of the future of Doug Burbey?
Yeah, so the fifth book right now, it'll still be co-authored with Mel to finish out the series, but because she's well, one, she owns the publishing company, and she's a full-time writer as well. So I'll be doing probably about 75-85% of this one right now, but I'm already working on the second one. I've got a couple other publishers that want me to do to get into some of the series like Fey War and some of the other ones because they like how I write characters, and so they're now, "Hey, what do you know about orcs?" That came up at a convention from a publisher the other day. I'm just like, "Orcs? You mean like Lord of the Ring orcs?" They're like, "Yeah, but we have our Fey War series. I need you to read some of these books. And I want you to write a book from an orc POV." I'm like, "That sounds okay. I could do that. I can do that." So what the just the grunt orcs pissed off perspective of being bossed around and sent in all these stupid battles to die for no reason whatsoever as a slave. They've got to have some good conversations in between these fights. So that's one I've got drafted up for, and that's with Canon Publishing. And then but the next project I have really after that is I'm going to go into a more of a humorous near future uh, kind of military sci-fi comedy where a guy takes a job at the international moon base, just a scrub job outside of there, but his entire thing is he's trying to figure out how to experiment because he wants to open the first lunar brewery and become the first brewmaster of the moon. So strange idea, but I'm going to work with it. It's international espionage and all this other stuff because everybody's out there spying on each other. Everybody's building death rays on the moon for their country pointed at the Earth, but nobody will admit to it. But you can see it out the window, sort of thing.
No, I think that's super important. And when you talk about the whole orc army piece, I'm gonna writing my next piece, and I was writing the Goblin King, and originally I had it as kind of like Goblin, but then suddenly it became this whole play off um, Bowie to Dewa, and so it's like ended up being totally off, totally like unexpected that he ended up being played off David Bowie as the Goblin King, and so now he's this very kind of sexy Goblin King in leather pants, and I was like, I don't know how we went from scary Goblin King to this Goblin King, but it just kind of it's amazing how the characters take over your story. What kind of experiences have you had with that, where your characters just went, I'm just going to do my own thing?
So, so what's funny is that I've actually writing the fifth book in the series now. There are characters in there that exist going into the fifth book that I had no intention of having in more than a couple of chapters. You know, they were named characters because there was more dialogue than capable of not naming them. But one in particular, there's two characters that I absolutely love that get introduced in Blood War Rage and then Betray, become principal characters, and one actually becomes antagonist. But it was the antagonist's minion. The character's name is Johnny Boulder. He's basically the chauffeur and, resident fix it guy. Go beat this guy up. Go torture this guy. Just, he's a bad guy minion,
Yeah.
but his character was so fun to write. I started finding myself changing scenes so that I could get him in there, and he runs all the way through the series. When the antagonist goes away and the new boss comes in, well, he just shows up for work. And the guy's like, "Who are you? You just work with a guy that I just killed to get this job." Well, I work here, so I work for whoever. So now I work for you. It was just a real fun dynamic. It's like I'm a minion. You're the new boss. I work for you. You need me to kill somebody today. What are we doing? You need me to drive you around. So he became really really fun to do, and I just love the bad guys. Actually, I love the antagonists, and I love to give them depth. I want for people to kind of like understand where they're coming from, instead of just why is he trying to take over X, Y, or Z? Well, that personal backstory, but I like to make sure that it's up front, that I like the antagonist to wear it on their sleeve.
I have a really good beta reader who helps me with that because I have a really hard time with the antagonist. I might have to reach out to you because I'm always like, but he's so when he's just such a nice person, he's just misguided, and it's like, no, he's evil, write him worse. I'm like, okay, I love
Well,
this minion
and that's
concept. It's great.
so I like the antagonist though that doesn't think that they're evil. They can justify it somehow. So my antagonist had to do a speech, and he wasn't a military commander, but he had to rally his troops, right? So basically, he's got his stormtroopers out there and going to march them off into this battle that basically he caused, with the demons to save humanity, and this, that, and the other. So I needed to write in this speech that he gives in Blood War Betray, took me like 3 weeks to do. And I kept rewriting it because I'm like, I need this to be believable, because the soldiers that he's trying to convince to go into this fight are not, they're not Nazi SS soldiers that are just going to fight. They had to be convinced. So I needed a speech that would convince the reader. So so if you look, yeah, this is every author's, internet search browser or their Netflix thing. So I started watching all the speeches with subtitles in there from like Mussolini, Hitler, Idi Amin, all these horrible people that were getting people to do horrible stuff. But I'm like, well, how are they doing that? How did they speak? How do they talk? What type of tone did they do? And I rolled that all kind of into the speech in Blood War Betray, because I wanted the reader to go, the guy's got a point. And when you get comments like that, then you're like, okay, yeah, all right, okay, so you nailed that one.
And I think that's so important as writing those kind of believable characters. So let's kind of fast forward. I love the meandering journey of the interview. Let's look at you. You have these books. Book 4 is out. You're writing book 5. What do you want a reader to take away from Blood Wars? You were saying how you had this discussion with other authors, what you took away. What do you want readers to take away from your books?
Really, so there's a couple pieces in there. So I've got a couple characters. I got young characters. I got old characters. Not a lot in between. So I want a reader to find something in the book that they can relate to. So that's one thing. So I have a lot of varied characters inside of there. But really what I want them to take away from it is there is still a concept of the noble sacrifice that doesn't have to be done absurdly. You know, and by that I say that a character who in a story that is one redemption, as well, because the character who starts off, it's after a horrible war, just total apocalyptic war. So horrible things were done even by the humans inside of there, and he had blown up entire cities, ordered the destruction of entire human cities just to prevent the demons from doing a thing inside of there. So there's a redemption arc inside of there, but I want readers to enjoy a story, but not feel like they were having something shoved down their throat. So I need it to be humor. I need people to understand. I get these comments a lot as a military guy in the jokes, because there's a lot of gallows humor in there. And if you've ever been in the military, and if you've ever been in a couple of wars like me and my friends there have, and everyone else, the humor can be off-putting, and sometimes people will hear it on the side and not really understand it. When they read these books, I think they start to understand it a little more. And for military folks that read it, there's a very strong undertone of coping with post-traumatic stress disorder in there. The military readers usually pick that up pretty quick. They say, "Hey, Doug, is this your trauma therapy in Blood War Rage?" Because there's a couple scenes that are very specific to dealing with PTSD inside of there, and I said yes. And the fact that we're having a conversation and talking about it is a successful thing, because that's one thing that really helps out veterans and all that, or anybody suffering from PTSD, or any therapist will tell you that the discussion's very important. Not to be ashamed to talk about it. And if somebody picks up something like that from the book, that's spectacular.
I think that's great. We had W.D. Kilpack on earlier. W.D. Kilpack the third. He wrote Battle Calm, and he interviewed a lot of veterans for this book. And it was really funny. He used the term that he got from veterans about normal people, right? And I said, as a veteran, like, you just have certain things you talk about because it was normal to you. Like, where you're like, oh yeah, and then he got shrapneled, and then he got shot. And you don't realize when you talk to people who were outside of the experience that is not what AKA normal people go through. But in your lexicon, you're like, yeah, well, my buddy Juan got shot. And then somebody is like, oh, da, da, da. And you're like, dude, that wasn't the point of the story. Like, I was going to tell you something else.
Yeah. It's like that was just the setup. But what was really funny is what he told the doc. Now that's the funny part.
Right. That was actually the story, is he thought he got stung by a bee. And he asked me to look at it. I'm like, dude, you were shot. And he's like, that's not funny. I'm like, no, dude, there's a bullet in your calf. It's not funny. We got to go to the medic. So it's funny. We started off with bee stings. I want to thank you so much for being here today. I do want to give a plug for 24 Authors in 12 Hours real quick. This is an author helping author event. So if you want to donate, anyone out there, we do have donations. And more importantly now, we have merch. So if you want to get a coffee mug or a water bottle or something cool, feel free. And then I'm going to shamelessly plug my own book, which is the newest book I have. It's called Decoding History, The Invisible Thread. It is absolutely free today if you download it from Kindle and you want to give it a read. what I could say is dystopian fiction, not at all military fiction. It is set in a world of libraries and underground espionage, and we have brought brothels back. So it's very much like Let's Limit Knowledge, but increase prostitution, and some of it is grounded in real world history throughout the years, and that's where the term decoding history comes from. So if anybody wants to check it out. And Doug, before we go, any last words that you want to impart that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Oh no, it's now Blood Wars series on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited. So if you're already paying for Kindle Unlimited, you can download the book, and you've already got it. So I will be in Atlanta for Dragon Con 28th through the 1st with about 50,000-60,000 of my closest friends out there. I got about 9 panels. Some from my professional side, which is military technology and science, and all the rest is on urban fantasy and apocalyptic. So I got 9 panels. We also have a dealer's hall, second floor, at the Mall of America, booth 2125, I believe it is, inside of there. So we'll have about 18 hours during the week where I'll be there, able to sell and sign books to you as well. So hopefully I can see you folks down there. If not, check me out on Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those.
Okay, and we put Doug's socials in here, so go ahead and link those. And Kindle Unlimited, what a great way. So we got your Kindle links in there as well. Thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll be back in a few minutes with our next author and 24 authors in 12 hours.